My stepfather taught me everything he knew about the business. From a young age, I soaked up every bit of knowledge he shared, always eager to prove myself. When he retired, I was certain that he would name me the CEO of his company. After all, I had dedicated years to learning the ins and outs of the business. But when the time came, he didn't choose me. Instead, he made my brother, who spends most of his time partying and traveling with his friends, the CEO. My brother knows nothing about running a business, and this decision left me completely blindsided. To make matters worse, my family has turned their backs on me. All because I dared to follow my dream of becoming a CEO. They now see me as the black sheep, accusing me of sabotaging my stepfather's company. My grandparents, on my father's side, even went as far as removing me from their will. The only way they'll consider welcoming me back into the family is if I stop trying to take clients away from my stepbrother. But things weren't always this way. Just a year ago, I believed that I would inherit my stepfather's talent management company. I had worked so hard my entire life, hoping to make him proud and continue his legacy. However, it seems that in the end, blood truly is thicker than water. I'm a 30-year-old man who has been working for my stepfather since I was 18. My father passed away when I was very young, and later, my mother remarried a widower who had a son just 3 years younger than me. We became a blended family, and despite the changes, I never lost contact with my father's side of the family. The way my stepbrother Scott and I were raised, no one would have guessed we weren't blood relatives. My stepdad treated us both like his own sons, though we were very different in our interests and personalities. While my stepbrother spent his school holidays on trips, partying with his friends, I spent mine begging my stepfather to let me work at the company. He eventually gave in, allowing me to do small tasks like answering phones, bringing coffee, and running errands while I was still in high school. My mom was incredibly proud of me for taking an interest in the business and working so hard. During college, I continued to work for my stepfather part-time, in the field I was studying. I always turned to him for advice whenever I faced challenges, and he was there to help me every step of the way. The money I earned usually went into savings, as my mom and stepfather were already covering my tuition. I might sound entitled for thinking I deserved to run the company, but in many ways, my stepfather had been preparing me for that role from the start. Unlike me, my stepbrother never showed any interest in the business. But despite all my efforts and dedication, it was he who ended up in the position I worked so hard for. I began working for my stepfather while I was still in college. He took me under his wing, mentoring me throughout the years, and I eventually became one of his most valued interns. When I finished my degree, I had a variety of job offers from different companies, all eager to hire me. But despite these tempting offers, I chose to stay with the family business. I couldn't bring myself to leave behind everything I had worked for and the people I cared about for a more comfortable job elsewhere. In hindsight, I should have taken the best offer and walked away because what I ended up doing was setting myself up for disappointment. I had accumulated years of experience in the business, and my job prospects were excellent. My stepfather made me an offer with benefits and promised me that I had a bright future at the agency. As I continued to work there, I was entrusted with larger and more significant projects. At first, my fellow employees didn't take me seriously, but through sheer hard work, I earned their respect and trust. Everyone in the company knew that I was his son and his right-hand man. The business became my entire life. I had little time for anything else. Over the past 5 years, I poured my heart and soul into the company. I started from the bottom, and my stepfather was always fair, ensuring that I genuinely earned every promotion I received. As my position within the company grew, he began to seek my advice on business matters. Before long, I knew all of the company's trade secrets, every single client, and even our competitors. I was a key player in closing deals, and I quickly became one of the top managers in just 5 years. Then, my stepfather announced his retirement, which meant that the position of CEO would soon be available. Everyone, including my mother, believed that I would be the one to take on this role, given the success I had brought to the company. I was ready for the opportunity. My stepfather had even hinted that I was moving up in the company for quite some time. But when the moment came, he shocked everyone by naming my stepbrother as the new CEO candidate. I felt utterly betrayed, as did many others who had witnessed the hard work I had put in. My stepfather claimed that my stepbrother had the potential to lead the company forward and mentioned that he had been mentoring him for the past 7 months. The reality, however, was that my stepbrother had been working overseas for different companies, none of which were in the same field as ours. Even if he had been taught everything there was to know about our business in that short time, he was still far from qualified to take on the role. I pulled my stepfather aside one day and asked him directly why he had chosen Scott over me for the CEO position. I had to know the reason behind his decision, especially after all the hard work I had put into the company. He looked at me and said that while I was a good employee, I still had a lot to learn before I could become a leader. His words stung, so I asked him if his decision had anything to do with the fact that Scott was his biological son, and I wasn't. That question seemed to set him off. He got angry and started questioning whether he had ever treated me like I wasn't his son. He essentially told me to grow up and stop acting like he owed me anything. The conversation left me feeling empty, like I had been wronged in a major way. Even some of the other employees believed that my stepfather had made the wrong choice. If I were just another employee who had worked at the company for years, I might have accepted it, but it felt completely unfair that the rest of us had to start from the bottom while Scott was handed everything on a silver or rather, gold platter. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I had done everything right. I brought in the best clients, sacrificed my social life, and even gave up holidays just to be mentored by him. I felt like he had misled me, making me believe that I was being groomed for something greater. I had taken every compliment to heart, believing that I had a bright future ahead in the company. But in my mind, that future was supposed to be at the top, not working under someone with zero experience. As the reality of the situation sank in, I saw things for what they truly were. He had lied to me, creating the perfect employee who would never leave the company. For a man who prided himself on his ethics, it became clear to me that he had none. He had practiced blatant nepotism, appointing my stepbrother as CEO the moment the opportunity arose. Right after the news broke, I called my mom to tell her what had happened. I was hurt and needed her support. But instead of the empathy I was hoping for, she told me that it wasn't the end of the world and that other opportunities would come my way. She even asked me to support Scott and help ensure his transition into the company was smooth. Her response left me with a sinking feeling that she had known all along about the plan to leave me out in the cold. In that moment, I wanted to quit on the spot. I was bitter and felt robbed of what I believed was rightfully mine. But I knew I had to be smart about it. I wanted my departure to leave a mark, to make them feel the loss. So I stayed. I watched as my stepbrother stumbled through his new role, making a mess of the company. I bided my time, waiting for the right moment to make my exit, one that would hurt them the way they had hurt me. I tried to give my stepbrother advice whenever I saw him heading in the wrong direction, but he always reminded me that I was in a lower position. Word spread quickly among the employees, and most of them were already unhappy with how he was treating them. During this time, I was quietly making plans to start my own company, even as I began to steal clients right from under their noses. My stepfather was hardly ever in the office, and my stepbrother struggled with even the simplest tasks. They didn't notice how bad things were because I was constantly picking up the slack for him. Despite my anger, that company meant a lot to me, which is why I wanted it all. My goal was for them to eventually beg me to buy the company from them, but I knew that could only happen if I was on the right track. So, I continued to put in my hours at the office while spending even more time working on the paperwork to start my own company. I had a friend in the HT department of my brother's company, and I asked him to find a loophole that would allow me to quit without serving a notice period. It turned out that my contract was coming up for renewal soon, so all I had to do was refuse to renew it. After months of careful planning, I secured an investor, and my plan to start my own company was set in motion. I knew the clients inside and out, and when I left, they followed me because they trusted my expertise. They had seen how well I handled things and didn't trust my brother, who was already making a mess of everything. Not to boast, but I was seen as something of a prodigy in the industry, while my stepbrother was just starting to fumble right out of the gate. The day I handed in my resignation, my contract had just expired, and coincidentally, my stepfather was in the office to check on the company. They were both stunned when I handed in my resignation. They immediately tried to make me a counteroffer, hoping to keep me from leaving. My stepfather even went so far as to offer me the position of co-CEO alongside his son, but I refused. He had the chance to make me CEO long ago, but he chose not to. Now, he was offering it to me just to keep me from leaving. I told him that he had made a huge mistake by choosing his son to inherit the business instead of me. I might not have been his biological son, but when it came to business, I was more of a son to him than my stepbrother ever was. Yet, deep down, I should have seen it coming. The signs were there from the beginning, even if they were subtle at first. There was always a distinction between me and Scott, little things that hinted at a difference in how we were treated. While I worked tirelessly, often putting in 98-hour weeks, my stepbrother was given an allowance and bounced from one job to another, only to fail and eventually be handed the CEO position. Even my mom and grandparents tried to convince me that staying in the family business was the best choice for me. But I told them it wasn't worth the mistreatment and disrespect I felt from being led on by my stepfather. I couldn't understand why my mom and granddad kept pretending that we were this picture-perfect family when, in reality, we weren't all blood-related. My mom had chosen my stepdad and my stepbrother over me, and they all assumed I would fail if I left. My stepfather even told me that I was no longer his son and that I would never make it without his connections. He accused me of the worst kind of betrayal for deciding to start my own company. Hearing those words hurt deeply, but I had felt the tension building for a long time, ever since he appointed Scott as CEO. My whole family decided to cut ties with me. Thankfully, I was already living on my own, so at least I didn't have to worry about moving out. But I knew I had to prove to them and to myself that I could succeed on my own. I started my business small, with just me and an assistant whom I paid with most of my profits. But my years of experience in the industry paid off, and I slowly began to expand my business. There were moments when I thought I might fail, times when I felt completely overwhelmed. I had no one to turn to for support or advice. Everyone I knew was connected to my stepfather. Scott even offered to take me back into the company multiple times, but I knew he just wanted me to help save the sinking ship. There was no way I could return after my stepfather had disowned me. Gradually, I gained more clients, and some of their clients left Scott's company to sign contracts with me. One day, I was struggling to pay the electricity bill at my office, and the next, I was receiving contract offers from all directions. My hard work was finally starting to pay off, and I knew I was on the right path. After all those years of hard work and preparation, I was finally doing what I had trained for, becoming a true leader. My company grew rapidly, expanding from a small office to an entire building in just a few months. The business media took notice, covering my incredible growth, and I was even named one of the top entrepreneurs of the year. As my company continued to expand, I hired more employees, and some of my former colleagues returned, seeking jobs with me. Meanwhile, it became clear that my stepbrother was running our family's company into the ground. Employees were going unpaid, yet he was overworking them while carelessly spending company funds. He struggled to grasp even the basics of running the business. His clients were neglected, and he employed poor business strategies that only made things worse. I wasn't sure if my stepfather was trying to help him, but if he was, it wasn't making any difference. I was living on my own by this time, having cut off communication with my family. My stepfather was furious with me for leaving and starting my own company, blaming me for knowing my worth and daring to compete in the same industry. Despite being retired, he still held significant influence in the industry and tried to sabotage me by spreading negative rumors. But I decided to ignore the drama and focus all my energy on my company. By the end of the year, my hard work paid off, and I received a small award for the upcoming Businessman of the Year. My company was now generating millions in revenue, all thanks to the risks I had taken. It was a proud moment, knowing that I had built something successful on my own terms. Recently, my grandparents from my father's side reached out to me. They live out of town and weren't fully aware of the situation. It seemed that my stepfather had given them his version of events, likely skewed to make himself feel better. When we met, they asked why I was ruining the family company instead of helping it. I explained the situation with the CEO position and how things had unfolded. But they dismissed my concerns, saying I was just being petty. They then gave me an ultimatum, as if I owed them an answer. They told me that if I let go of my business and returned to work for my stepbrother's company, they wouldn't disown me as well. I stood my ground and told them I would never give up being my own boss or stop pursuing my clients, even if it meant further estranging myself from the family. I knew I had made the right choice, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. I swore that I would make them regret the way they treated me, and I could already sense their rejection. When I refused to cooperate with their demands, they informed me that I was being removed from their will. Their estate is worth millions, and inheriting that money would have set me up for life. But I knew that no amount of money was worth sacrificing my own happiness. I told them they could keep their money because I didn't need it. If my business continued on the path it was on, I would keep swimming in cash. Even if I were only making a modest income, I would rather earn it through my own hard work than rely on their inheritance. I do what I do because I love it, and my passion for the business is what drives me every day. The money is just a bonus. Since that conversation, I've noticed that they, too, have joined the rest of the family in cutting me off. They've blocked me, but I don't care what they think or say about me. I am independent and successful because of my own sacrifices. Nothing was handed to me. I had to prove myself every step of the way, and I will continue to do so. In my opinion, starting my own company was the right decision, and the fact that my stepbrother's company is now at risk of failing is not my fault. They all made their choices, and now they have to live with the consequences. I know that my success bothers them, and I'm happy about that because it's the best kind of revenge. I've moved on with my life, and this is the last time I will ever talk or think about them. As for the story, I completely agree with the original poster, OP. OP deserved to be the CEO, and I don't blame him at all for the path he chose. He started his own business, and now his father and stepbrother are upset, but they brought this on themselves. What do you think? Was OP right to go his own way, or should he have stayed with his family and waited for the CEO position after his brother inevitably failed? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Story 2. Over the weekend, a 25-year-old woman, went to a dinner with some of my dad's relatives. We don't see these relatives very often, so it was one of those rare family gatherings. My dad has never gotten along well with his brother, my uncle, and honestly, I haven't either. My uncle is rude, talks down to people, and we just don't agree on many things. Usually, I try to keep my distance and ignore him when I can. But at this dinner, my uncle decided to ask me about the car I drove up in and about my new job. I started working about a year ago after graduating from college, and I've been working hard to build my career. I'm a software engineer, and I'm proud of the work I do. It's a field that requires a lot of skill and dedication, and I've put in the time and effort to be successful. With the money I've earned, I recently bought my dream car, something I've always wanted. So, when my uncle, in his usual condescending tone, asked me, "Hey, how much are they paying you anyway?" I knew he wasn't asking out of genuine curiosity. It was more like he was setting me up to make me feel bad. I didn't want to play along with whatever game he was trying to start, so instead of giving a vague answer like, "Oh, enough," I decided to be straightforward. I told him exactly how much I make. Apparently, that wasn't the answer he was expecting. He started going off on a rant about how number 25-year-old should be making that kind of money and how stupid my company must be for paying me that much. I was shocked by how upset he got, but I didn't back down. I told him that I deserve every penny I make because I work hard, and not just anyone can do what I do. This response seemed to really set him off. After dinner, I received a text from my cousin saying that I had been really rude at dinner and that I had insulted my uncle's intelligence. My dad, who doesn't like his brother anyway, took my side and supported me. He knows how hard I've worked, and he understood why I stood up for myself. However, my sister agreed with my cousin. She told me that I shouldn't have mentioned how much money I make or talk to our uncle that way because it's considered impolite. Now, I'm left wondering if I was in the wrong. I didn't think I did anything wrong by simply answering a question and defending myself when I was insulted. But the reaction from my cousin and sister has made me second-guess my actions. Am I the one at fault here? Honestly, I don't think I'm the bad guy in this situation. There was one comment I read online that really stuck with me, not the a-hole. He asked a question, you answered. He insulted you, and you defended yourself. Don't dish it out if you can't take it. That's exactly how I feel. My uncle started this whole thing by asking about my salary in a way that wasn't respectful. I just responded honestly, and when he insulted me, I stood up for myself. So, what do you all think? Did I go too far by telling my uncle how much I make and defending myself when he got upset? Or was I right to stand my ground? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment and appreciate all your opinions. That's all the stories I have for you today. If you're new to the channel, make sure to smash that subscribe button. Revenge Online will see you tomorrow with more stories. And remember, it's cool to be kind. See you guys in the next video.